Imagine waking up one morning and realizing the clouds are speaking to you. Not in words, but in whispers, movements, formations, subtle dances of vapor above your head. You step outside. The world is veiled in a white mist. You think it's fog, but what if it's not? What if what you're seeing is not just condensed water vapor, but a coded language of the earth? We never question fog. We just walk through it. But today, let's stop and ask, why does it form exactly here, exactly now, exactly this thick? Because the truth is, fog doesn't just appear. It's summoned, somewhere, high above the land. Temperature begins to play a cruel game. Warm air presses down, trapping the cool beneath. That's where it starts, the quiet battle between invisible forces. And beneath that battlefield, you're walking, breathing, existing, unaware that every breath is touching an ancient war of elements. They say fog hides, but it also reveals. Stand still in it. Close your eyes. Your skin will tell you what your eyes can't see. The molecules swirling around your face have been part of oceans, rivers, maybe even the breath of something no longer alive. The fog is ancient, it remembers. People assume the weather is random, but that's the lie. The real secret: weather follows patterns, rituals as old as time, and every storm, every breeze, every mist is a memory being replayed. Fog is one of the oldest. It's the sigh of the earth, held in silence and released only when the world forgets to watch. There's a story told in mountain villages where fog is common. They say, if the fog sits low and refuses to move, someone is coming. Not something. Someone, a person, a traveler, a being the land has been waiting for. The elders never say what kind. They just warn. If the fog touches your ankles and clings, don't walk. Wait, watch, listen. That fog is not natural. We dismissed those stories. But scientists are learning slowly that fog behaves strangely. It reacts to sound, to movement. In controlled labs, vapor clouds formed patterns that resembled neural activity. Yes, brainwaves, meaning fog, under the right conditions, thinks. What if Earth's atmosphere has a memory? What if weather is its emotion? And fog, It's quiet, panic. People talk about haunted houses. But no one talks about haunted skies. That moment when mist rolls over your skin, and for a second, you feel you're not alone, not watched, known. One woman once stood in the Scottish Highlands, enveloped in thick fog, and she reported hearing voices. Not echoes. Voices they called her name, repeatedly. And when she screamed nothing, the fog didn't just swallow the sound, it absorbed it, like it was listening. Science says fog muffles noise, but they haven't explained why some sounds vanish entirely. Not reduced. Gone. Not distorted. Erased. Ancient sailors believed fog was the breath of drowned men, and that's why ships disappeared in it. Not because they lost their way, but because they were taken. Swallowed by stories never told. Taken by memories that refuse to fade. When fog forms quickly and clears just as fast, something has changed. A decision made, something seen. You weren't supposed to see it, but you did, and the fog. It came to erase the evidence. There are places where fog never leaves. Valleys where the sun shines above, but the ground remains dim, blurred. Locals say the land there remembers pain, death, fire, and the fog is its way of grieving, mourning, forgetting, but the land never forgets. Why do certain people vanish in foggy forests? It's not just disorientation. It's not just nature. Think deeper. Infrasound low-frequency sound waves has been found in dense fog. It affects the brain, causes fear, confusion, hallucination. But who generates the sound? If you've ever stood in a sudden fog, felt cold that doesn't match the temperature, heard your own heart beat louder than normal, it wasn't just you. It was something inside the fog. Noticing. They say, when the fog whispers your name, don't answer. Even if it sounds like someone you love. Especially then. Some claim fog is the Earth's way of testing who's awake. Not physically. Spiritually. Who walks through mist and sees more than gray. Who hears patterns in silence. Who understands that fog is not wither, it's a veil. And what lies behind the veil? We'll go deeper. But not today. The fog has thickened. That means it's watching us now. Be still. Let it pass. The fog does not simply retreat. It retreats with purpose. Like a curtain being drawn back only when the play is over. But what if the play never ended? What if you were still in it, just unaware of your role? After that morning in the Highlands, the woman who heard voices in the fog stopped speaking altogether. Her family said she stared out windows during cloudy days, whispering things no one could understand. When asked what she heard, she wrote one word over and over again: remember. That single word started a study. Scientists placed audio equipment in fog-heavy areas and played recordings of human voices to test how sound moved. The results were inconsistent. Sometimes the voices echoed unnaturally far, other times they vanished completely. One test revealed something strange: a whisper that was never played back, recorded on the tape. It wasn't one of the researchers. They listened to it. It said a name, one of theirs. Fog, by nature, should not hold sound. It should scatter it, but this fog, it contained it, stored it, and, in some cases, sent it back altered. As if it was answering. There's a file buried in a meteorological lab in northern Canada, marked confidential. It describes an experiment where fog was artificially generated in a sealed environment. The researchers introduced specific electromagnetic frequencies to the chamber. What followed wasn't just condensation. It was shape. Within the fog, geometric patterns formed and held for minutes. Triangles, spirals, symbols that resembled ancient carvings found in caves halfway across the world. No one could explain it. Then the machines began to fail. Lights flickered. Pressure readings spiked despite stable temperatures. One scientist reported hearing a rhythmic pulse in his ears, synced perfectly with the blinking light on the emergency panel. They shut it down. Deleted most of the footage. But not all. In the remnants of that experiment, a frame-by-frame analysis showed something else. A silhouette, not human, not animal. Something standing within the fog for precisely 6 frames. When brightened, the outline didn't match any known creature, and then it was gone. We've always treated weather as passive, but what if it's reactive, conscious? Not in the way we think, but in the way forests communicate through root systems. Or how jellyfish respond to energy fields in the ocean. What if fog is a sensor, a probe, a message? History is full of stories where fog precedes transformation. Kings murdered, wars ended, ships lost. Always, the fog rolls in first. Not to hide the act but to witness it. In Norse legends, the mist walkers were said to come from the veil when the world turned quiet. They were not gods, not spirits, observers. They watched, judged, left, and no one remembered their faces. But maybe the fog does. There's a region in South America where locals refuse to enter a certain valley during the morning hours. They say the fog there listens. If you speak, it follows your voice home. One traveler laughed at the warning. He filmed the whole walk. His camera worked fine. Until he played it back. There was no footage, just static. Except at the very end, when a single frame showed him, but older, aged by decades. Standing in the same place, smiling. He went missing 2 days later. No one found his body. The question isn't what is fog. The question is, what does fog want? Perhaps it doesn't want anything. Perhaps it's a window. A thinning of something thicker. Time, memory, reality. And maybe those who vanish into fog aren't lost. They're taken, repositioned. Somewhere we don't yet have the senses to reach. What if every patch of fog is an open door? But not all doors go forward. The next time you see it forming, slowly curling along the ground, slipping through trees, embracing quiet streets, ask yourself, who opened it? And more importantly, who's going to close it? In the late 1800s, a series of journals were discovered in a decaying cabin deep in the Carpathian Mountains. They belonged to a weather observer stationed there by a forgotten scientific society. His entries began mundane temperature readings, wind speeds, but as the pages turned, something shifted. He began to describe the mist with reverence, as if it were alive. It knows I'm watching. One entry read. It returns the favor. Over time, he stopped reporting data. Instead, he wrote stories, accounts of figures moving through the haze, clocks stopping for exactly 7 minutes whenever the fog arrived, and dreams that bled into his waking life. The last page of the journal wasn't written in ink, it was scorched into the paper. One sentence, burned clean through. It's not the fog that enters us. It's us who enter the fog. Many dismissed his writings as madness, the result of isolation. But decades later, explorers who found the cabin reported seeing low fog every morning, even when conditions didn't support its formation. One of them claimed he saw a man standing at the edge of it, dressed in 19th century clothing. When he called out, the figure stepped backward and vanished into the mist. We treat fog as a byproduct of nature. But what if it's an event? There are documented instances of people emerging from thick fog with no memory of where they'd been missing time. Hours unaccounted for, clothing damp but body temperature normal. In one case, a woman stepped into a fog bank during a morning hike and came out 40 minutes later convinced it was still the previous day. Her smartwatch had stopped. Her phone wouldn't power on until she left the valley. These aren't isolated, but they're never connected. Because fog is too ordinary. Too accepted, and that's why it works. The perfect disguise isn't hiding, it's blending. One physicist once proposed that fog may temporarily distort gravitational fields on a microscopic scale, shifting how we experience time. He died before publishing his full theory. His lab notes, however, mention phrases like chronological inconsistency, localized temporal pressure, and one chilling term, perception loops. Could fog be the visual symptom of something larger, an unseen tear, a thinning between layers of reality? There's a hill in Ireland known among locals as the place of forgotten steps. Those who climb it, when the fog is thick, often report the sensation of walking farther than the hill's physical size allows. Some reach the summit and find unfamiliar trees, unmarked stones, birds that don't match local species. One man filmed the entire hike. The footage shows him walking straight, uphill. But satellite data places him looping around the base of the hill the whole time, never ascending, never changing elevation. So where did his mind go? Some physicists argue that human perception is easily tricked. Others aren't so sure. One experiment using VR simulation and artificial fog revealed that even artificial mist caused subjects to experience false memory placement, things that weren't part of the simulation at all. Where did those memories come from? If fog can make us remember things we've never lived, is it showing us something? Or are we simply seeing too much? There's a phrase scratched into the stone wall of an abandoned observatory in Switzerland. The fog remembers. No one knows who wrote it, but it's not the only place those words appear. On a ship manifest from 1911. A sailor's log recorded a night of thick sea mist. He wrote, "He walked out of the fog like he knew me, but I didn't know him. Until I did." The next day, that sailor was gone. The ship had never docked. All this points to one possibility. Fog is a boundary, not a thing, but a threshold. Between what is and what might be, between now and then, between seen and unseen. And the most dangerous part. We keep walking through it without asking why. There's a file buried in the archives of a northern Russian military base. Long declassified but largely unread. Inside is a brief, unemotional report. Unit Bravo 7 encountered unexpected atmospheric distortion while maneuvering through valley coordinates 56.191, 38.121. Visibility dropped to 0. Radio communication failed. 10 minutes later, all instruments reset. Maps no longer aligned. 5 soldiers reported seeing a mirrored version of the Tyran-identical topography. Reversed vegetation, inverted light angles, trees casting shadows in 2 directions. Fog receded after exactly 13 minutes. All data corrupted. No photographs survived, though each soldier described identical details in their post-debrief interviews. Every one of them was discharged. Within weeks, medical reason, derealization disorder. The pattern repeats across cultures, across centuries. Aztec priests believed fog was the breath of gods, and walking into it was a divine test. Fail, and you forget who you are. Succeed, and you remember who you were before you were born. In 1982, a hiker in the Pacific Northwest disappeared into a low-lying fog that rolled in without warning. His search lasted 2 weeks. When he reappeared, 20 miles from the original trail, his clothes were dry, his beard had grown, his nails were longer. He believed only a few hours had passed. But the strangest thing was his backpack. Inside it were photos he couldn't have taken. Fog-covered cliffs. Valleys never mapped. Figures in the distance whose proportions didn't match any known human form. Asterisk experts accused him of fabricating the images. But film analysis showed they were developed using a chemical no longer in production. It had been banned in 1974. Asterisk, so where did he get it? Asterisk fog doesn't just play with visibility. It plays with certainty. It dulls the edges of things. The ground is still there. The trees are still trees. But the lines between objects, between moments, between thoughts begin to blur. Until you're not sure if the crunch underfoot was a twig or a memory. Asterisk in one hospital. Psychiatric patients reported identical hallucinations during foggy weather. Not frightening visions. Just repetition. A hallway walked twice that shouldn't exist. A nurse saying the same word in the same tone seconds apart. A reflection moving slightly out of sync. Asterisk and always they described a soft humming sound. Low, almost soothing. Almost. Asterisk a research team placed IG sensors on volunteers and exposed them to fog in controlled environments. Most showed normal results. One didn't. His brain activity resembled that of someone in REM sleep and he was awake, answering questions, alert. When asked what he was thinking, he replied, I wasn't. Something else was. Asterisk, his file was flagged for further study. The next week, he vanished. Asterisk fog has always served a function. In nature, it regulates temperature, transports moisture. In stories, it separates the world of the living from the world of the spirits. In both cases, it stands between two states. It is the middle, the threshold. Asterisk, the more we look, the more the threshold looks back. Asterisk, a child once drew a picture after a family walk in a foggy park. The drawing showed for people, the family. But in the corner, a fifth figure tall, thin, no face, arms too long, hands down to its knees. The mother laughed nervously, asked who that was. The child said, the fog man. He wanted to come to asterisk children, see what adults dismiss. Not because they're magical, but because they haven't yet learned what they're not supposed to notice. Asterisk a poet once wrote, the fog comes on little cat feet, but he was wrong. The fog comes with memory, with presence, with purpose. It curls around our ankles, not to greet us but to measure us. Asterisk, one day, fog will cover an entire city. Not for minutes, not for hours, for days. And when it clears, something will be different. Buildings slightly off, shadows longer. Clocks that run backwards for 3 seconds before correcting. Just enough to be explained away. Just enough to be denied. But some will remember. And that's who it comes for next.
In the late autumn of 2009, a team of spelunkers, exploring a vast cave system in northern Slovenia, descended into a section marked on no official map. Their reports detailed strange formation stalactites that grew in spirals, water that ran upward along stone surfaces before vanishing mid-air. But the most unusual detail came from a crevice at the bottom of the descent. Fog-dense, milky, pulsing, as if breathing was seeping upward. Asterisk. One climber descended into the mist for a routine survey. His rope remained taut for 23 minutes. When they pulled him back up, he was unconscious, hypothermic, and whispering in a language none of them understood. Later analysis revealed the language bore syntactic similarities to an extinct Proto-Balkan dialect not spoken for 2,000 years. Asterisk. When the fog was tested, it contained no unusual chemical composition, but its structure under microscope revealed something impossible. Geometric lattice patterns in the vapor molecules. Not random dispersion. Structure, order, design. Asterisk. Why would fog have structure? Asterisk. There's a theory in fringe science known as micropatterned atmospheric intelligence. The idea that under specific pressure, temperature, and humidity conditions, atmospheric particles might briefly organize in ways that mimic thought. Mainstream science rejects it. But ancient cultures embraced the concept long before microscopes existed. In the Himalayan highlands, monks meditate in morning mist, believing it contains echoes from earlier lives. In one sacred scroll, there's a passage: "The cloud is not a cloud. It is the memory of the sky, made visible for those who still remember what they forgot." Modern neuroscience has uncovered an eerie parallel. During fog exposure, certain brain frequencies in the temporal lobe associated with memory and perception begin to oscillate abnormally in sensitive individuals. They report vivid memories of events that never happened to them, past lives, alternate versions, or echoes of someone else entirely. In one clinical trial, a participant emerged from a fog chamber and recited a poem never documented. When lines from the poem matched fragments carved into ancient stones in western Turkey. Poems thought lost in the burning of the Library of Pergamon. Where did she hear them? Fog doesn't just conceal, it leaks. Leakage is a concept in quantum theory information, seeping between dimensions, between possible realities. What if fog is the condition under which the fabric thins? A soft spot, a vent, a brief moment when the veil becomes gauze. People lost in fog often describe the same phenomenon. Hearing footsteps behind them that never catch up. Seeing figures who disappear when focused on directly, and most chilling a second version of themselves, moving in the distance, always walking away. Some chase it, others freeze, but none ever touch it. The doppelganger myth is old, spanning continents and cultures. The idea that each person has a twinner mirror self, who appears before significant life events, sometimes death, sometimes transformation. Fog is the most common environment for such sightings. But what if they're not omens? What if they're options? In certain rare diaries of 16th century sea captains, records show crews entering sudden fog banks and emerging to find islands. On their charts that didn't exist, cities built differently, constellations subtly altered. Most thought it madness. But what if the fog simply led them into a world one fraction different from their own? The Mandela effect, millions recalling details of the past differently, has been laughed off as collective false memory. But many of those claiming memories of alternate events also describe moments in childhood where they became lost in the fog. If fog is a crossroad, then we've been blindly walking into new paths, never knowing we left the old one behind. How would you know? How do you prove your life is the one you started in? You don't. There's a field in Norway where fog appears. Every year, on the same day, at the same hour, for exactly 23 minutes. Observers have noted the trees near the fog grow asymmetrically, leaning toward it. Birds avoid flying over it. Animals refuse to cross its boundary. But humans, they wander in, and not all come back. Those who do are marked not physically, but energetically. Devices behave strangely near them. Clocks lose time. Dogs bark. Children cry. And mirrors reflect something behind them that isn't always the room. One psychiatrist documented 3 such patients. All had once been missing in fog. All returned days later. None aged a second. Blood tests showed no signs of stress or starvation. But their eyes no longer dilated normally in light. One night, all 3 vanished. Their windows locked, doors sealed. Surveillance footage showed nothing except for one detail. At the exact same time, fog formed outside each of their windows, then faded. We treat weather as something that happens to us. But what if some weather is not weather at all? What if fog is an invitation? Or worse, a summons? A long-forgotten document hidden in the archives of an abandoned weather station in Iceland. Details a peculiar case from 1934. The Observer, meticulous in his hourly reports, noted a week of normal atmospheric behavior till the night of November 3rd. That entry was different. Scrawled hastily, barely legible, it read, "Not fog. Not fog. It breathes in patterns." I saw it rearrange itself when I spoke. I whispered, "Who are you?" and it formed rings. Perfect rings. The rest of the notebook was blank. Years later, when the building was surveyed before demolition, researchers found a room sealed from the inside. On the wall, in faded graphite, was a single word, "Again." That night, fog rolled over the site. Reports like these are often brushed aside, hallucinations, stress, weather anomalies. But there is a mounting body of anecdotal evidence from people who experienced something in fog they can't rationalize. Shared phenomena, time distortion, spatial disorientation, auditory hallucinations, and most disturbing emotional interference. People claim they didn't just feel confused or afraid in the fog. They felt watched, chosen, understood. How can vapor understand? One theory suggests fog behaves like a distributed sensor network, an ambient system capable of receiving, amplifying, and even responding to emotional frequency. The human body emits electromagnetic signals. What if fog can read them? In 2006. A group of amateur radio enthusiasts near the Scottish coast picked up non-terrestrial patterns of static interference during fog-heavy nights. It wasn't random noise. It repeated. Mathematicians later determined the sequence matched prime number intervals. When they broadcast a simple binary response, static ceased instantly. They tried again the next night. Nothing. The message had been acknowledged. There's an unsolved murder in southern Japan. 1971. A photographer was found in a fog-covered bamboo forest, camera in hand. Cause of death, cardiac arrest. But his last photo defied logic. It showed the same forest, from the same angle, with the same trees, but no fog. And standing in the distance, a shape, faceless, no feet, arms too long. The negatives were verified authentic. The camera's internal clock was off by exactly 27 hours. But its battery had been dead for 3 years. Fog doesn't kill. It witnesses, and perhaps selects. In some regions of Tibet, the monks who wander into the silent mist, a phenomenon occurring only during the equinox often, return with altered voices, deeper, slower, as if echoing through a canyon. The most devout claim it's not them speaking anymore, but the memory of the mist speaking through them. Asterisk, they are tested by elders. Only a few pass. Asterisk, the rest vanish into pilgrimage and are never seen again. Asterisk, science can't explain this, but physics leaves room for it. Quantum coherence allows for matter to exist in overlapping states. Superposition. Interference. If fog contains water droplets suspended in such a state, is it possible it overlaps with realities? Dimensions slightly offset from ours. Asterisks. Some physicists believe dreams are echoes of adjacent timelines. If that's true, then fog may be their bridge. When dreams and fog align, people report moments of absolute clarity, like déjà vu, so intense it feels like prophecy. Asterisk. One man wrote a letter in 1999 to a scientific journal. He described standing in a London park as fog enveloped the area. In that moment, he saw hundreds of versions of himself standing in different positions, some holding umbrellas, some without, some weeping, some smiling. Each one faded in and out. He was awake, sober. The experience lasted 62 seconds. He never saw fog the same again. Are we truly singular beings in a linear timeline? Or are we passengers drifting through echoes, catching glimpses of the other paths we might have walked? Asterisk, if fog is the manifestation of possibility then entering, it isn't a walk through weather, but through a web of might have. Sometimes the fog lets you come back. Sometimes it doesn't. Asterisk, there's an old superstition in rural Poland. If you're caught in fog and feel a sudden chill on your spine, drop a thread behind you. It will unravel as you walk, anchoring you to the world you left. If the thread runs out before the fog clears, you've gone too far. Asterisk, the strangest part. Some hikers have actually tried it, and in the morning, when the fog lifts, the thread is gone.
On the outskirts of a forgotten village in northern Romania, a man was found standing at the edge of a field as the sun rose through heavy fog. He was barefoot, dressed in clothing decades out of date, with hands clasped tightly around an old photograph. When approached, he didn't speak, he didn't blink. He simply pointed into the mist and whispered, "She's still in there." Asterisk, the photograph showed a woman in 1930s attire standing in the same field. On the back, August 12, 1937, the day the fog took her. No one knew who he was. In modern surveillance footage, fog appears to disrupt infrared sensors more than expected. Not scatter or block them but overload them. As if the fog reflects more than temperature. As if it contains signal. When slowed down, a thermal video of a fogged-out highway showed pulses moving through the mist, rhythmic, organized, almost like breath. Experts blamed calibration issues. The engineer who reviewed the footage at home later told his wife he could hear voices in the playback. Faint, clipped, overlapping. She dismissed it. Until the following week, when her son began repeating one of the phrases in his sleep. Words never spoken in their home. He had never seen the video. Stories of fog as a boundary extend into indigenous American folklore. Some tribes tell of the quiet white-up place where time slows and the spirits of the land whisper truth to those who listen. Shamans entered the fog willingly but not to seek vision, to carry messages. They were vessels, intermediaries, but they warned, never speak your true name in the fog. It can be stolen, and when a name is stolen, so is the soul attached to it. Could identity itself be vulnerable in fog? Asterisk. In a neuroscience lab in Germany, test subjects were exposed to low visibility, high humidity conditions mimicking dense fog. Halfway through the trial, some participants reported dissociative experiences. They no longer felt like themselves. Some spoke in different accents. One man claimed he remembered dying in a place he'd never visited. Asterisk. He broke down, weeping, repeating a name no one recognized. Asterisk. Fog doesn't just surround you. It seeps inward, and that's when it becomes dangerous. An astrophysicist, studying noctilucent clouds, once hypothesized that the upper atmosphere stores more information than we can comprehend, that each layer holds the energetic residue of events on Earth, like cosmic memory foam. Fog, she believed, is the accidental compression of that data near the surface. A glitch, a bleed. Asterisk. She died before her paper was published. But her notes survived. Asterisk. One passage read, "The fog was never ours. It was always watching, always collecting." Asterisk. She had circled a diagram showing fog banks forming at sites of historical trauma, not just wars, extinctions, mass migrations, unrecorded sorrow. Asterisk. Why would fog be drawn to grief? Asterisk. Perhaps because grief leaves an energetic imprint, a resonance. And fog, like liquid, like memory, seeks the lowest point. Asterisk. In Buenos Aires, a sculptor placed microphones in the corners of his studio after feeling watched during foggy mornings. He captured low-frequency tones he couldn't hear with the naked ear. After running them through an audio spectrogram, he noticed waveforms resembling human speech, flattened, slowed beyond recognition. He accelerated the playback. Asterisk. It whispered his name, not once, repeatedly, and not in his own voice. He moved that same week. Left the country. Never sculpted again. Asterisk. How do we fight what we can't touch? What if we're not supposed to fight? What if fog isn't an enemy but a consequence? A symptom of something we triggered without knowing? Asterisk. Could our technology, our satellites, frequencies, and vibrations have thinned the sky in places? Asterisk. 1. Anomaly in satellite mapping shows repeated cloud formations forming sigil symbols, known only in ancient geometry, in the stratosphere above equatorial islands. Always always paired with ground-level fog. Asterisk. Mathematicians dismiss it as coincidence. Asterisk. But the same pattern appears in cave paintings in 6 different continents. Asterisk. What if ancient people didn't fear fog because they understood it? Asterisk. What if their myths were not metaphors, but maps? Asterisk. There is an encoded rhythm to how fog appears and disappears. A breath, an inhale and exhale, when charted across decades. Some meteorologists have found repeating cycles matching long-dead celestial calendar patterns the modern world has forgotten, but the fog has not. It moves when we sleep. It curls into our cracks. It waits until we believe it's just weather. And that's when it shows us what we've been too blind to see. Asterisk. Not a place, not a being, a mirror. A perfect white mirror. And one day, you will look into it and find a face you don't recognize, but that knows everything about you. Asterisk. Asterisk. A paleobiologist in Patagonia was excavating a ridge once submerged beneath ancient seas when a sudden fog rolled in, dry, thin, unnaturally cold. The air shifted. Her instruments failed, batteries dying, all at once. But her watch, an old analog model, kept ticking. Later, reviewing her notes, she discovered she'd recorded 8 continuous hours of work. Though the sun hadn't moved. Asterisk. She dismissed it until her photographs showed fossil beds that didn't match any known record. Fossils arranged in geometric patterns. Perfect spirals. Symmetrical formations. Nature doesn't do symmetry at that scale. But something else might. Asterisk. Days later, she dreamed of being underwater, immobile while voices pulsed through liquid light. When she awoke, the smell of the fog was still in her room. This is how it begins, not with answers. With familiarity. You see fog once, twice, a dozen times. It becomes background. You forget that anything hiding in plain sight must, by design, be invisible not to the eyes but to suspicion. Asterisk. You trust your surroundings, that's the error. Asterisk. In 1975, a retired air traffic controller began noticing a strange pattern during weather anomalies. Pilots reporting whiteout turbulence often spoke of a disorienting silence in the cockpit, followed by sudden shifts in position off course by miles. Instruments remained functional. Weather radars showed nothing out of place. Yet several of these events occurred in conditions of heavy low altitude, fog, asterisk. He tracked over 30 cases before a supervisor ordered him to stop. His final report contained a single statement: the sky bends and fog is the lever. The phrase was underlined twice. Air is not static. It's layered, pressurized, constantly in flux. But real fog exists on a razor's edge of stability. It shouldn't last. And when it does, something is preserving it. Asterisk, there's a coastal town in South Africa where every 10 years fog rolls in and covers the beach for exactly 66 hours. Locals call it the silence. During that time, birds vanish, dogs refuse to go outside, the ocean becomes still, and phones lose all signal only within a tight 2-kilometer radius. Asterisk, scientists set up audio and video equipment for the most recent event. Nothing recorded. But when the fog lifted, the devices all showed new timestamps, exactly 13 hours ahead, and all their clocks, manual, digital, solar, had synchronized to the new time, 13 hours forward. Time didn't skip, it was overwritten. Asterisk, could fog be a correction mechanism? Not natural but imposed, a tool used by something. Asterisk, there are places where fog returns again and again, same time, same place, same density, like an appointment, like a ritual. And in those places, stories emerge. People hearing music where no sound exists. Finding objects that don't belong to them. Seeing their own homes arranged slightly differently after the mist recedes. Asterisk, these aren't malfunctions, they're alignments. Asterisk, there's a word in ancient Sumerian carved only once into stone, translated roughly as sky water, that remembers. Some believe it refers to rain. Others, more cautiously, suspect fog. Because fog doesn't fall. It clings, it remains, it listens. Asterisk, a geologist hiking in the Pacific Northwest once found a cave revealed only during fog. He entered, marked the location, took readings. But when he returned with a team days later, clear skies, GPS coordinates exact, there was no cave, just stone. Asterisk, yet inside his backpack was a sample they hadn't collected, rock, not from any known mineral family, and a carving on it, a spiral within a spiral. Asterisk, the spiral is the oldest symbol, it means many things: time, growth, repetition, or escape. Asterisk, because sometimes the only way out of the fog is deeper in. Asterisk, the more you resist, the more it confuses you. But those who surrender, who walk calmly, without fear, without forcing understanding, are the ones who come back changed. Asterisk, not harmed, not broken, just altered. Asterisk, their eyes focus differently. Their voices carry echo. Their memories shift slightly, as if their childhood homes were once painted blue instead of green. Or the faces in old photographs are almost but not quite right. Asterisk, and always, they say the same thing: I wasn't alone in there. Asterisk, but when asked what they saw, they never agree, because the fog doesn't show you what's real. It shows you what you forgot was real. A remote monastery in the Himalayan foothills keeps a single chamber locked throughout the year, opened only once every 50 years, and only when the fog arrives precisely at midnight on the eve of the summer solstice. Inside, there is no altar, no relics, only a shallow pool of still water, surrounded by ancient walls carved with a single repeating symbol, a mirrored eye. Asterisk. The monks call it the witnessing room. Asterisk, when the fog enters the chamber, they say, the water ripples without wind, without touch. And those who gaze into it do not see their reflection, they see the version of themselves that never existed, the path untaken, the identity unclaimed. Not fantasy, precision, details, memories that were never lived but somehow remembered with pain, love, and familiarity. Asterisk, those who linger too long either never speak again, or begin speaking in languages forgotten by the world. Asterisk, these are not visions, they're exchanges. Asterisk, in 2011, a team of climatologists studying microweather systems in Nova Scotia tracked a living fog cell, a mist mass that moved independently of wind patterns, avoided high ground, and pulsed in temperature as if in reaction to human presence. One intern walked into the center of it with a tether and heart monitor. For 3 minutes, he was calm. Asterisk, then his pulse spiked. He collapsed. Pulled out. Asterisk, when he awoke, he whispered, I remember my death. Asterisk, he hadn't died. Not yet. But what he described matched the account of a man who drowned in that exact spot in 1894, down to the color of the lantern he'd been carrying. Asterisk, reincarnation, possession, echo. Asterisk, Or is fog simply time temporarily softened? Asterisk, one researcher proposed that fog is an interface, not an obstacle. A screen, a buffer between dimensions where information not just air flows both ways. He theorized that consciousness can slip when the atmosphere is just unstable enough, like radio signals, jumping frequencies. Our minds might briefly tune in to another version of the broadcast. Asterisk, and what happens when two broadcasts hear each other? Asterisk, there have been whispered rumors in the intelligence community of a Cold War project, known only as mirror drift. The goal, to weaponize fog as psychological interference. Files redacted, scientists vanished, test sites erased. But one slip survived, a memo from a senior analyst warning that continued exposure fractures the continuity of self. Asterisk, not fractures the mind. Fractures the self. Imagine not losing your memory, but gaining too many. In Siberia, there's a legend of the White Shepherd, a being that walks inside fog and herds lost souls back to roads, but only those meant to return. The rest, it keeps not maliciously, simply by purpose, because the fog, they say, doesn't trap. It sorts. Asterisk, in 2020. Satellite weather images captured a fog pattern forming over the Atlantic with startling geometry: 5 interlocking circles expanding. Experts called it a rare meteorological event. But when overlaid with ancient astronomical charts, the formation aligned with a planetary configuration that last occurred during the construction of the Great Pyramid. Asterisk, coincidence. Asterisk, or recurrence. Asterisk, everything in nature moves, in cycles, seasons, tides, orbits. What if fog is the signature of one such cycle, not weather, but recurrence itself, the universe reminding itself of itself? Asterisk, if that's true, then perhaps fog is not a visitor, but a returning native. A pattern older than stars, using vapor as its vessel. A consciousness too vast to speak in words, so it speaks in silence. It curls around our homes, our cities, our history, not to observe, but to remember. Asterisk, because memory is not passive. It seeks shape, and in that shape, we find stories, myths, warnings. You felt it. That moment when fog dulls the world, and suddenly, your thoughts feel louder. Your heartbeat more ancient, as if something old within you is waking up to meet something older outside. Asterisk. And maybe that's the point. Maybe fog is not a thing at all. Maybe it's a meeting. Asterisk. 6:30, jam 6:30 PM Okaraki Dastan, in the spring of 1966, a forest ranger stationed near Oregon's Cascade Mountains filed an unofficial report describing a fog bank that appeared without warning on a clear, dry morning. Within minutes, radio contact was lost. He ventured in to investigate. What he found was silence so total, it made his ears ring. No birds. No wind. Just the soft crush of boots on damp soil. Then came the whispers. Not voices. Not words. Just intent pressing in on his senses, like a pressure change. He described the sensation as being scanned, as if every memory he'd ever buried was rising to the surface uninvited. He turned around, retraced his steps. But the trail was gone. The trees had shifted. Asterisk, hours later. When the fog finally lifted, he was standing only 20 feet from his station, yet facing the opposite direction. His footprints told a different story. He had walked in a perfect spiral, circling back again and again. His boots had worn a path where none had existed. Asterisk, and etched into the soil at the center of the spiral was a single word pressed deep, impossibly uniform. Seen. We believe fog is a passive element. We are wrong. Asterisk, somewhere in the Swiss Alps. A professor of metaphysics maintains a private collection of instruments, designed to measure spatial echo, his term for environmental memory. Among them is a bell sealed in a vacuum jar. It only rings during fog. No vibration, no impact, just sound clear, low, impossible. He's never opened the jar. Because one night, it rang in Morse code. It spelled a question. He won't say what it asked. Asterisk, people underestimate how fragile perception really is. You assume your eyes give you truth, but they filter. Your brain edits, fills gaps, removes excess. Fog interrupts that process. By stripping away the clutter, it reveals something older, primal, the shapes behind the shapes. The forms language forgot how to describe. Asterisk, that's why children cry when they see figures in the mist. Not because it's imaginary. Because they haven't yet been taught to ignore what's real. Asterisk, in Greenland, fishermen avoid a particular inlet. They call it the breathing bay. Fog always sits there, perfectly still, then pulsing. In, out, as if something massive is sleeping beneath the waves. The sonar readings. Blank, always, except once. A single tone, sustained, harmonic, not from any whale, not from any machine, just music. The sea froze for 5 hours after. One anthropologist spent 2 decades collecting global myths about fog. Every culture has them, and the overlap is chilling. Beings that walk silently. Voices calling from nowhere. Travelers stepping in and never returning. Fog that waits. Always waits. It has patience. Because it has time. Because it might be time. There are moments very rare. When people step into fog and step out changed. They remember things they never knew. They speak languages they never studied. They solve problems they never understood. Asterisk, and always, they say the same thing. I didn't learn it, I remembered it. Asterisk, so what is fog? A mist, a mask. Asterisk, a mirror. Asterisk, or is it something more terrifying, an archive? Asterisk, a living record, moving slowly through the world, collecting, watching, absorbing the pieces we leave behind, memories, emotions, echoes. It doesn't want to harm us. Asterisk, it wants to know us. Asterisk, because somewhere, deep in the heart of what we call fog, something is listening. Asterisk, and one day, it will speak. Asterisk, in the spring of 1966. A forest ranger stationed near Oregon's Cascade Mountains filed an unofficial report describing a fog bank that appeared without warning on a clear, dry morning. Within minutes, radio contact was lost. He ventured in to investigate. What he found was silence so total it made his ears ring. No birds. No wind. Just the soft crush of boots on damp soil. Then came the whispers. Not voices, not words, just intent pressing in on his senses like a pressure change. He described the sensation as being scanned, as if every memory he'd ever buried was rising to the surface uninvited. He turned around, retraced his steps. But the trail was gone. The trees had shifted. Asterisk, hours later. When the fog finally lifted, he was standing only 20 feet from his station, yet facing the opposite direction. His footprints told a different story. He had walked in a perfect spiral, circling back again and again. His boots had worn a path where none had existed. Asterisk, and etched into the soil at the center of the spiral was a single word pressed deep, impossibly uniform. Seen. We believe fog is a passive element. We are wrong. Asterisk, somewhere in the Swiss Alps. A professor of metaphysics maintains a private collection of instruments, designed to measure spatial echo, his term for environmental memory. Among them is a bell sealed in a vacuum jar. It only rings during fog. No vibration, no impact, just sound clear, low, impossible. He's never opened the jar. Because one night, it rang in Morse code. It spelled a question. He won't say what it asked. Asterisk, people underestimate how fragile perception really is. You assume your eyes give you truth, but they filter. Your brain edits, fills gaps, removes excess. Fog interrupts that process. By stripping away the clutter, it reveals something older, primal, the shapes behind the shapes. The forms language forgot how to describe. Asterisk, that's why children cry when they see figures in the mist. Not because it's imaginary. Because they haven't yet been taught to ignore what's real. Asterisk, in Greenland, fishermen avoid a particular inlet. They call it the breathing bay. Fog always sits there, perfectly still, then pulsing. In, out, as if something massive is sleeping beneath the waves. The sonar readings. Blank, always, except once. A single tone. Sustained, harmonic, not from any whale. Not from any machine. Just music. The sea froze for 5 hours after